Yo, it's Zac Maloy.
Good to talk to you, dude.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, of course. So you're definitely no stranger to Nashville. I know the Nixons are from Oklahoma, but you've been here since, is it 10 years now?
Yeah, 10 years, man. I moved my family here. Post Nixons for me was, you sit around after you've been an artist, and once that kind of runs its course as it did sort of for us, you look around, you're like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
And, it was pretty simple. I had done some co-writing at the end of the Nixons. And I'm like, oh, hey, I can do that. I can make up songs. So got a pub deal with Sony, started writing, very quickly realized I needed to be in a music town, not Tulsa, Oklahoma, as much as I love Tulsa. So we packed up and moved here. We've been here 10 years. We love it. My boys basically been raised here. They're now one in college, one headed off to college. So
right
home
on,
for us, man. Love it.
I love that. And the Nixons, you guys formed in 1990.
Yep, that's right.
And how quickly did you guys get a record deal? I feel like back in those days, I always tell young bands today, it seems like it's easier than ever to get your music in front of the right people, but harder to get them to care. But you guys back in 1990 secured a deal. How did you guys go about getting signed back then?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the classic longest overnight success story of all time, which was for us, dude, it was and I'm going to sound like the old man now, but back then it was get in a van, trailer, and just go play. And so we were in Oklahoma. We cracked into the Dallas music scene, which was pretty vibrant in the early 90s. Bands like the Toadies, Deep Blue Something,
oh, nice.
Tripping Daisy. We all got signed within the same year or so. Bands in Oklahoma, the Chainsaw Kittens and Flaming Lips, who were big influencers for us.
Yeah.
We could sort of see, you can get signed and not be from L.A. or there was this myth of move to L.A., get a gig on the Sunset Strip and become, get signed. For us, it was very much known. It was just go play, just work, sweat, bleed. We played Oklahoma everywhere we could, in Texas. Then we branched, just look at a map, and that's what I tell a lot of young bands this now, because I work with a lot of young bands. I still encourage them to get out and play, because you can reach more people, with social media and the internet. With technology in general, it's crazy. And we're having to relearn a lot of that now in this new reunited version of what the Nixons is. But no, back then, dude, we would play, anywhere that would let us play. And then, we would beg someone to let us play on a Tuesday night. I remember we played this pizza, restaurant in Arkansas, because it was halfway to Memphis, where we had gotten our first gig in Memphis, just sort of branching out and out and out.
The old school way of doing it. That's the way bands used to. That's how we did it too in my band, getting out there and playing. And I feel like there's something to that even to this day, because you're right. You can do all the social media stuff, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the product, if you're not a really rad, tight live band, then it really doesn't matter how great the social media presence is,
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that it was interesting in this. So just to catch people up, we were signed in the 90s. We all went our separate ways. John, my drummer, is the full-time drummer for Seether, so he's been still, banging away. Jesse, back in Oklahoma, has had several different bands that he's successfully sort of put together and produced and played guitar in. Ricky has done a little bit of music, but Ricky kind of was stepped the furthest away, and actually he's got great stories. I love catching up with him. He rode his motorcycle to he's one of those dudes that rode a motorcycle to the southern tip of the continent, and then to the Arctic Circle. So he went out and did his own version of Spreading His Wings. But we reunited, and to your point, when we reunited just 2.5 years ago, after not even, in some cases, not even really talking to each other, the occasional Facebook, yo, how you doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ricky and I hadn't spoken at all. And, that first rehearsal, then you remember, oh, okay, yeah, we were, a band that could play together tight, because we played for 10 years. Dude, we formed in 1990. We kept it very succinct, and we basically completely dissolved any version of the Nixons in 2001. So, it was literally a decade, right? We were a 90s band that then just went away. But when you spend a decade playing 300 days out of the year, that's what we did for the 90s. I even tell stories about our second album on MCA. They wanted it quick. And so we actually wrote it kind of on the road, recorded it, and even played a few gigs while we were making that second album. And then we went back on the road. I mean, we were just one of those bands that just played.
That's awesome.
And so even 17 years later, when we got in a rehearsal space back in Oklahoma City, it was like the downbeat. I remember thinking, okay, yeah, this is going to work. It's going to work again. You know?
Yeah, no, it was true. It was there in the beginning, and it's always there. I love that. And whenever, I believe it was 1995, whenever Sister came out off of FOMA, I recall seeing that song, because I'm from St. Louis originally, as we talked about before, and that song got insane play on the stations up there in St. Louis, especially back at that time. And I recall seeing you guys, I don't know what the show was, but it was like on NBC or one of these different shows where it was called Friday Night, like Friday Night Live or something like that. But you guys played on there, and that was the first time I ever heard Sister, and I immediately loved that song, man. And one thing, a side note, I don't think you get credit for the fact that you had amazing hair. Dave Perner from Soul Asylum always gets the hair compliments, but you were right up there, in my opinion, as well. But tell me something about Sister. What was that song exactly about? Because that was a really big hit for you guys.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's funny because I'm now of a slightly older age. I'm not going to say my age, but I'm just going to. Someone can go do the math based on getting signed in the '90s when you're in your 20s. But it's funny because we're back at it, right? We're releasing new music, and so speaking of hair, I have to tell this story to bust my kid Jude, my youngest son, who's actually graduating high school in this COVID world we're living in, which is sad and weird, and you know, he's no prom, no graduation. He just turned to me the other day and he goes, "Dad, I'm not sure guys your age I don't think it's okay to have that long of hair." It's grown back, dude. You'd be proud of me. I've grown it back out. Because I'm kind of like, well, what the hell? Why not, right?
Yeah, you might as well.
But no, Sister, dude, that was the song. You know, that was kind of the song that cracked open a lot of things for us. We had done a little EP with an indie label out of Dallas. We made our second sort of, you know, album, a full length. It was called Halo, which incidentally is now streaming for the first time ever. All these new things are happening with the band, which is so cool. But
yeah,
so that album Halo, you know, we wrote the album. We didn't really. We kind of felt like something was missing. I had written this song when my sister moved to Los Angeles. She's in the film business, and so she moved to LA. And it was interesting. I'd seen this postcard that somehow made it back to me. I think she had, you know, it's in one of those weird things back in the day. You write a postcard, and some of the lyrics were literally lyrics that I put into that song, and I was just like, you know, I miss you. Just, you know, to my sister, it was nothing more than that. I tell people that, you know, in the '90s, I think there was this cloud that hung over just the '90s in general, where everything's so dark. I would have people come up to me, and it was funny, they can say like, "Man, was it a heroin overdose? Like, what happened with your sister?" One guy randomly thought that somehow he inferred in the song that maybe she was a stripper, and you know, so my sister's literally working on like big budget films in LA, and very much alive and very happy and very healthy, still is. You know, we keep in touch, you know, all the time, and we're tight. But no, it was just a song about missing someone. And the cool thing, the life that it's had, you know, since, it's been in a couple movies, and it's kind of had a cool history that, you know, it still gets people in that way of like, oh, this song was important to me. It got me through losing someone, whether it was your sister or a friend or whatever.
It definitely hits on something. And I got to be honest, I think back in those days too, I assumed, like you said, from the darkness of the 90s at that time, I assumed it was about your sister who had passed away. But I love the fact that it's just a basic idea of missing someone, because I think that strikes with people in so many different ways, even if you only say just those words, just saying you miss someone. That's rad, man.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It is funny because there were some days I think the label wanted me to like lie, you know?
Yeah.
Say, man, maybe you should make up a better story than just like, I missed my sister. But it was just that simple.
And sometimes it is. I love that, man. And so then you guys split up in 2001. What was the reason for you guys calling it? Just needing a break, or how was that?
Well, you know, listen, you and I have talked, you know, off mic, and you know, man, being in a band, it's just, you know, I bet sometimes tell people I really would love to, you know, try to figure out how to write this down, whether it's some sort of a book or some blogs or whatever. But being in a band is truly the most unique relationship I've ever been in. I mean, I'm married. I've been married for 20 years, 20 plus years. And it's, you know, that's tough, and it's tricky to navigate. But being in a band is like being married to four people. I mean, it's just a bizarre thing that at a certain point, you know, so not to get too in the woods about the exact way it splintered, but it started to splinter with some business decisions, honestly, just, the way it can sometimes do.
Yeah.
And then a couple guys left. Then, one was maybe going to come back and then didn't. And then it just all was so shaky. And then, to be honest with you, man, we all just sort of looked around and had different, lives.
Yeah.
Different things. I had a kid. I mentioned my kid. I've got two, not grown, but 18 or 19 and 17 now. And so think about that, right? It's 2020. So you just said we broke up in 01. My kids were coming around and I started to look around and be like, okay, wait, my priorities are different now. I still want to do music. I mentioned before that I transitioned into writing songs for other people and with other people. But at the time, man, it just busted apart. We were all going in different ways. And that's just kind of how it crumbled.
I think you're right. I think, and especially being going 10 years strong. And I read online somewhere that at one point in time you guys were doing 300 shows a year. Is that true? Because that's a lot of shows.
Yeah, that was kind of the average. It was kind of bizarre because some years we actually did do more.
Oh wow!
I remember talking to my accountant one year, and I'm like, "Wait, this can't be right. Were we really out like 321 days or whatever it was?" And he just said, "Yeah. I mean, you guys." That's the way you roll. I mean, it was just, and again, this too, because you were, around them, but it was a different thing. It was a different time. We wouldn't need to do that now, but that's just what we did. We also got lucky in some ways because we would be, I'll never forget, we were getting ready to go to Europe and do a smaller tour, and then Kiss put makeup back on, and they did a cool thing by bringing, sort of young 90s bands out. They did out Alice in Chains and Everclear and Degeneration and us.
That's
and
awesome.
We did a few weeks, and then that added to a few more weeks. And on the East Coast, we got to play Madison Square Garden with Kiss. And,
oh, no way.
And then, it's funny what I said, we got lucky. Then it's just a matter of, as when you have a couple hits, in this case, alternative rock hits or rock hits, you get more, demand. And so suddenly, dude, we did sort of in the really fertile period right in the middle was, a few months with Kiss, some dates with Bush, no doubt. And then the coolest one we did was really great. It was basically we just smothered the West Coast, and it was a 3-band bill with, speaking of Dave Pirner, it was Soul Asylum, Radiohead, and us on the front end.
Oh, wow. How was that? That's such a random tour. I love that.
I still look back on it, and when my kids see a random pass or laminate that falls out of a box in the attic, they're like, wait, this is the Nixons, Soul Asylum and Radiohead. And the funny thing about that tour was that Radiohead was in the middle. It was the Bends was the album, and so Soul Asylum was having a massive hit with Runaway Train. And so Radiohead obviously went on to become this iconic thing that they are now.
Yeah.
But then, dude, they were just second of three on a random 90s, rock bill. But it was amazing, man. We got to really, really see greatness at work because both those bands did it right. Even got to jump up. I jumped up a few times and sang Rhinestone Cowboy with Soul Asylum.
Oh, that's amazing.
One of those, those things I get to check off of the list of like, whoa, jam a classic song with a band you love. So it was cool, man.
That's awesome. And it's funny you mentioned that tour because I've seen, there was a website for a while that was like, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like strange concerts you never would believe. And that was one of the ones on their list was Soul Asylum with special guest Radiohead. And then you guys on there as well, because obviously people today, especially young kids, know Radiohead is this like really weird electro band. And they don't realize the first like 2 or 3 records were pretty straight up, rock and roll alternative rock songs. So at the time it definitely made sense. And I'm actually a massive Soul Asylum fan too. I had Dave on my show a couple months back, right before all the tours got canceled when they came and played the Cowan. And it's crazy how time just kind of does that, where like some bands like Radiohead, will still pack out arenas, and then Soul Asylum's down at the Cowan, but they still rock just as hard now as they did back in the early 90s, man. Amazing band.
Oh, did you see the show here?
Oh yeah, I was at the Cowan. I guess it was 3 months ago, or maybe 2 months ago. It was right around late February.
Oh man, I wish I could have seen that. I really did love that band, and to get that tour was sort of a dream come true for us. And then again, when we got the tour, I got to be honest with you, it was like y'all are going to be first of 3. The second band on the bill is this band Radiohead, and I literally remember thinking. I mean, it's funny how you have vivid memories, but I remember thinking, Oh yeah, that band that did Creep, that song Creep. You know, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
This was the beginning of the band's tour. So literally, when I'm sitting on the side of the stage hearing Fake Plastic Trees and High and Dry, that's the first time I was hearing that stuff. So yeah, it's funny. I'm going to go Google that tour, because that's funny. I love looking at random stuff like that like, you know, the tour you would never believe. But that was a weird one, but amazing. And by the way, I should say, it was crazy cool venues, right? Like, we played the Fillmore in San Francisco. We played like classic, you know, mid-level, not arenas, but like theaters and cool as hell rooms.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Great memory.
Did the Radiohead guys party at all back then? I know Soul Asylum did and still does, but I mean, did Radiohead ever party much at all? I guess there's really no record of that. Funny
you should mention that, because they weren't like throwing down at all. And by the way, we the Nixons as a band, we drank. You know, I always tell people we're such a weird anomaly of a band that, like, you know, I never was around people doing, you know, heavy drugs of any kind. We never had any sort of heavy drama like that.
Yeah.
But I'll just tell you a quick story that was just a classic memory for me personally, was that, you know, at the end of a tour, as you know, bands usually they'll do something cool on the last night, right? Just do something to celebrate and say goodbye. And so we played in San Francisco, and we all stayed, all three bands stayed at the same hotel. I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it's sort of known as, you know, certain cities have rock and roll hotels, and this was in San Francisco. It was the one, I want to say San Marcos, but that doesn't seem, that might be wrong, but it doesn't matter. It was one of these hotels. The Roosevelt in LA is the one there that we would stay at. That was super cool. It was one of those things that you're like, never know who you're going to see in the lobby.
Yeah.
But so for the final night of the tour, we're all poolside, and it was one of those old school hotels that, like, you know, the rooms are all looking, you walk out of your front door of your hotel room and you can look over down into the pool, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. And so we're sitting there. I'm sitting with Tom York, and he's sort of like, I'm not going to say the band he was bitching about, but he was sort of talking about a band or two from Britain that were kind of having success, and they were having a harder time at the moment. And he's, you know, just kind of, it was just funny to think of that, because I just watched this guy on tour just blow my mind every night. And so, you know, and obviously they went on to do great things, but it's just, we're all a little bit jealous, you know, of the dude that got it a little bit first before us. But it was really amazing, because I literally sat there at a table with Tom York, my drummer, drinking beers, not throwing down, but, you know, you asked about partying, and this was definitely an after party to remember for me, because, yeah, you look over there and there's Dan from Soul Asylum and Dave, and I'm talking to Tom York and sort of discovering the band. The footnote to that story is, weirdly, we walk up, John and I walk upstairs and get ready to go to our room at whatever, 3, 4 in the morning, and there's an open hotel door, and we hear someone strumming and singing, and it was Ray Davies from the Kinks, who was in town also.
Oh, wow.
Just sitting, strumming his guitar. We just stood in the doorway, and he motioned for us to come in. He sat and chatted for a minute. I don't remember anything he said, because I was probably drunk, and also my head was exploding at the moment. But no, but so I have this weird, you know, entwined memory of Tom York, you know, bemoaning the music business as it relates to British bands, Dave Turner drinking beer across the table, and then a Kink.
That is amazing. It's such a random cast of characters. I love that.
It was good, man.
So you guys split up in 2001. You start getting into songwriting. One thing about your songwriting, you're just like your resume. I got to be honest, man, it's the most like all over the board I think I've ever seen, which I think is awesome, because I think if someone can write songs of all kinds, I mean, that's amazing. You've worked with Three Doors Down, Shine Down, to Hailstorm, to Our Lady Peace, to Carrie Underwood, even Plain White Tees, Bare Naked Ladies. What's your thought process on like writing songs with people? Is there anybody that you wouldn't work with? Because it kind of seems like you're just willing to work with whoever.
Yeah, or just, you know, sort of just desperate. Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. No, I tell people that my discography is about the most schizophrenic one that I know. And yeah, so to answer your question, my attitude has always been, my grandfather played country music. He actually played at the Grand Ole Opry a million years ago, and I grew up listening to him, sitting around singing Johnny Cash songs, working on cars back in Oklahoma. And so I knew country music. I discovered rock and roll like we all did. You know, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, all those things. really fell in love with The Who. Was impacted then by college music in college, literally at the University of Oklahoma, bands like REM and The Cult and The Cure.
Yeah.
So all these influences, right, they sort of pile on. And so then when it's time to go write a song, it started with rock bands. Sony signed me because they needed someone. Rock bands were starting to sort of, I guess, rely on outside co-writers a little bit more. So I was, I was lassoed in, dude. I would fly to, Charleston to sit on a crappy rehearsal space floor, and then San Francisco. Remember working with a band, this really cool band called Dredge, out in their rehearsal space.
Oh, love them. Love Dredge.
In San Francisco. And then a series of things happened where I started to work with people that were involved with American Idol. Got a couple cuts with some of those people, Daughtry, David Cook. And then, that same management has Carrie Underwood. And then you get the question, sitting in a gleaming office one day in L.A., would you want to ever write with Carrie? And I just said, well, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And so got the opportunity to write with her and a fabulous dude, Luke Laird, who's an amazing songwriter here in Nashville. Wrote a song called Temporary Home that was blessed enough to say it was the #1 country song. So that opened some doors there, so that then cuts with Tim McGraw and Jake Owen, Lauren Elena, Parmalee, and all these other sort of real cool country artists, but never stopped working on rock stuff. That will never happen. It kind of almost happens by osmosis sometimes. And it's kind of cool. I'm actually starting a new company with Marty Fredrickson, who was one of my early co-writers, Scott Stevens, who's an amazing writer based in L.A., but also just bought a house here in Nashville. He was in the band The Exies, which we took out on tour. So you need to have him next time. He's officially in Nashville.
I would love that.
And then Blair Daly, who's a fabulous songwriter here in town. We're all starting our own little thing. Next interview, I'll tell you more about it. It's all sort of unfolding as we speak. But it's cool, man. It's we get to do crazy things like I currently have a Shinedown song riding the charts, along with the Scott Stapp song that's on the charts, the rock charts right now. And then, at the same time, my buddies Parmalee just released a little acoustic thing, and they put a song that I wrote on that with Tom Douglas, who's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So I've been lucky, dude, and a big part of it is who I've been lucky enough to be in the room with. I just mentioned those names like Blair and Scott and Marty and Tom Douglas. I mean, these guys are the best writers in the business, and I get to sort of tag along sometimes, So it's cool, man. It's very, very cool, and I'm blessed and lucky to have had some really cool opportunities like that.
Absolutely. And it always seems to me like you strike me as a really big fan of just music in general. So I think that makes sense that you would write with lots of people, because if you just love music, you love it all. Yeah, I mean, that's a cool thing. I had a manager at one point when I was moving to Nashville. I'll never forget this. And I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm moving to Nashville and had this opportunity with Carrie. And I think I'm getting a Blake Shelton cut, all this stuff. I'm like, I'm so excited about this. I'm going to really, hunker down and write, try to really crack into the Nashville scene. He said something to me. He said, that's fine, do it, but do me a favor and don't ever try to say, okay, now starting today, Monday morning, I'm a Nashville country songwriter. Just write good stuff. Yeah. Right? Because the song I wrote with Daughtry, I'm still real proud of it. I sing it right around sometimes. It's called Used To. And it uses this sort of, not to get too, under the hood, but it uses this lyrical device of, we used to talk like no one was around. We used to hold each other. And then the hook is, can we get it back to the way it used to be? So it's like a kind of a lyrical thing. Yeah. Temporary Home that I wrote with Carrie and Luke. It's very much a, 3 vignettes about 3 different human beings dealing with being in a temporary situation, foster home, halfway house, and then death, and moving on. This is just my temporary existence. And to me, a song like Temporary Home could have been refashioned and done with, another band I worked with, Hoobastank. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if it's a good song, it's a good song. And, I don't know that I'm ever going to be channeled for some of the more way country stuff, Yeah. The tailgates and the bonfires. Probably not, maybe. But no, it's that advice that manager gave me, which was just do you write songs the way you write songs, and then it'll sort of happen how it's supposed to happen. Do you find, since the Nixons got back together in 2017, do you find whenever you guys work on new material that you use some of the things that maybe, obviously if you've been songwriting this whole time, I'm sure your craft has kind of gotten even more of it, where it's more of a thing you do, you get better and better at it. Do you think it's affected some of the new Nixon stuff you got coming out?
I'm sure it must have. I will say this, however, that writing with the Nixons, and by the way, I should do the shameless plug. We have an EP that's coming out May 22nd. 5 brand new songs. First collection of new music we've had in almost 20 years. To answer your question, it was, how do I put it? It was sort of freeing. Is that a word? It was, it was liberating,
yeah.
I guess, because I could just sort of, dude, and you know this because you listen to all the same stuff I did. I loved Stone Temple Pilots, but dude,
yeah.
half of that stuff didn't make any sense at all. Maybe it did to him at the time. I don't know, and I don't care because I'm just like, leave here on a Sunday afternoon. Just just sing to me whatever, Scott. I don't care. But I love that, and so I'm not saying that the Nixon songs, don't make sense because I actually sort of value that. And always have. We talked about Sister. We had another song called Wire. It was an important song for us. Those songs had meaning. They had I could tell you this is what that song is about. We had very few songs that weren't about something. And that's still the case. But at the same time, we have this one song called Favorite Lies on the new EP. And it's just, I just had a blast just writing. That's just a cool lyric. I don't know what it means, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't need to care as much. And then by contrast, the current single that's officially releasing with the EP May 22nd, it's called Ghost of an Angel. And it's very much a story. It's a guy who's being haunted by an ex, love of his and can't let go. And then, spoiler alert, she finds a way to sort of, heal everything at the end of the song. But it's a story, it's very cinematic, and I can sort of see that song in my brain.
Yeah.
Whereas again, Favorite Lies, not necessarily. It's just kind of some cool lyrics strung together with an underlying meaning, but at the same time, I care a little less than you might have to care about. If you're writing a song that you're aiming for Tim McGraw.
I could see that. Because it's your own stuff in general. I definitely get that. And you re-recorded, we should mention, you re-recorded Sister and a few of your other hits as well. How was it to go back and re-record those? Because I've had some friends that have done that where they've re-recorded their bigger hits from back in the day and I add them to streaming services. And I always hear one of two things. I hear one thing, it was great to go back and re-sing it and revisit it. And some people feel kind of weird about doing that. How was that for you to sing those words again from 25 years ago?
Well, first of all, the exercise of it was amazing for me personally. I as a dude that can get a little bit, bogged down sometimes with comping a vocal. I don't know if people know what that is, but recording a vocal, doing 4 or 5 takes, and then putting together the best take. And to do that with these, we did 3 songs. We did Baton Rouge, Wire, and Sister. The story I tell is that I got asked about, hey, can we use Sister for this independent film a few years ago? And it was a decent amount of money they were offering us. And I said, absolutely, but you got to contact Universal Music, who owned MCA Records, our label. And, I talked to that movie producer a year later, and I said, hey, whatever happened? And they said, yeah, no one ever calls back.
Oh, wow.
Because that's the music business, right? But
yeah.
If I own the master of this new song, this old song, new version, I can just send it to them. I could have just sent them a Dropbox that day. And so that's sort of the why we did it. But back to singing it, dude, it was so fun for me. I loaded up the old version of Sister, put it in a Pro Tools session, and I was like, oh, man, I could probably sing that a little bit better now than I could when I was 22 years old. But I'm going to try to do it that way where, I was literally opening my mouth further than I normally would when singing, because I still sing some demos nowadays, and I'll go sing at the Bluebird. I've done your obligatory songwriter, performance stuff. And then the Nixons reuniting, I've had to sort of build back the voice a little bit. And, I probably could sing some of that stuff in a different way now, but I really tried hard to say, oh, no, I sang it that way for a reason back in 1994, and I'm going to do it again that same way. And it was really cool, too. I should shout out a guy named Derek Taylor, who's a great mixer, who mixed this stuff, and he just he really embraced it too. And I remember he called me one day. He's like, "Hey, I hope it's okay. I'm throwing an old school delay on the end of Sister because that's what y'all did back then. I would never do that now in 2020, but he did. So to answer your question, dude, it was an amazing exercise in sort of like revisiting a song, but also saying, okay, wait. Maybe I'm not going to do that one thing that I did back then. But for the most part, we sort of cut those songs the same. And we're going to do more. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. My hope is to eventually get, we're sort of doing the, just being business people and looking on Spotify and, okay, here's our top 10 songs. Let's re-record it.
It's smart, man. You guys did it because I've heard other bands do it to where it just sounds so different. But you guys did a really good job because, I mean, as you know, when you're a fan of a song, you have this personal connection to it. And so sometimes people don't react so well when they hear the new versions. But yours sounded really spot on. Like I thought it sounded great. Whenever you sent them to me, I was like, wow, this sounds just like the original. It just sounded maybe a little more polished, but it sounded really spot on.
It was interesting because there was a conversation of like, wait, should we attack these songs differently? And by the way, that's probably a conversation for a year from now. Because we did have a conversation, and I referenced Alanis Morissette went back and she did her album Jagged Little Pill more acoustic, right? And then mandolin and piano. It would be interesting to go back and revisit some old Nixon songs done in the 90s style, but redo them in a new way. Having said that, as I just mentioned that we were able to get some old Nixons albums up streaming for the first time.
Yeah.
And so that means that there's a 2020 version of Sister. There's the FOMA version of the main version people know. There's an acoustic version that's been floating around. And then there's the version from our album Halo. So I don't think we'll revisit Sister for a while. We'll leave that one alone.
You got something for everybody. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're covered there.
So what's the rest of 2020 looking like for you guys? I mean, obviously I know live music right now is kind of on hold everywhere. Were you guys planning on doing shows before all the COVID-19 stuff happened? Did you guys have to cancel anything?
Yeah, dude, I'm so bummed because we had a couple different tour things that were sort of bubbling under. We had been in talks with, we've been friends for years. I mentioned the Toadies. We did a tour back in the day that was the Butthole Surfers, Reverend Horton Heat, the Toadies, and the Nixons.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
We weren't going to do that exact tour again, but there were talks for the end of this year for something like that to happen again. The Toadies and the Rev, their albums, their big albums, major label debuts came out 25 years ago this year, as did FOMA, our album.
Yeah.
So that was going to be, there were some possibilities there. We had sort of one-off gigs in Arkansas that were supposed to happen last week and didn't. We have a gig booked in July. A couple gigs, I think, with Saliva that are getting pushed back. But to just plug a show that I can't even really believe is happening, we have a great relationship with Dallas, and I think by the time this airs, the show that we're doing is May 22nd. That is the same day our EP comes out. We're actually kind of excited about this. And I actually asked the dudes if I could mention it to you, knowing we were going to talk, because it will have been officially announced, I think, by the time people hear this. But there's a great club in Dallas called Lava Cantina. They're doing an amazing thing. There's a production company in Dallas that does live streams for huge events that they're sort of grounded in Dallas. They can't go do shows, right? Because no one can. But they sort of took over Lava Cantina, this venue in Dallas, and we're going to do a live stream show May 22nd at 9:30 p.m. I think go Google and make sure. Follow us on social media, and you can find out all this. We're going to be posting about it tons, but it's kind of crazy, dude. I won't get into all the details, but there is going to be a live audience, but they're going to be separated in these sort of stalls. They call them yards. It's a big event.
Yeah.
It's a big venue. And I know it's so weird. This is like, these guys are really, really forward thinking, and it's a small audience. I mean like 8 stalls on the ground floor with a table in the middle separated by 10 feet. And like 6 people can be at the table. I think already a couple of the tables have been bought by just like a couple, like hardcore Nixon fans are going to roll out for this, I think. But it's kind of cool but it is going to be live streamed like everywhere. That's the best part for me. And then just to be playing a rock show, I'm literally going to drive to Dallas. I like road trips. I'll do a podcast, and we're going to play a show, and then I'm going to come back home to Nashville immediately after. But it's going to be live streamed, and it's kind of funny. They also do a thing outside the venue. It's in Dallas. I don't know why I'm selling it so hard for a Nashville interview, but
I love it, man.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah.
But they sell stalls outside the venue, and there's a big, huge LED screen that will show the show, and they can tune their radio like at a drive-in movie theater and listen to the show in their car in case they don't want to get, go in, in case they're just whatever, a little bit less, brave to do that. I don't know that I would want to go to a show. I mean, I feel kind of weird even doing it, but it's literally going to be for a tiny handful of people, separated, tested. And so, May 22nd, new EP called Sonic Boom comes out, and we're going to sort of celebrate it with I can't even believe I'm saying this, but we're going to play a rock show.
I love that, man, because it's so hard to do it right now. And I will say this, try to imagine, just imagine your 22-year-old self, and if you from the future came back to a 22-year-old Zac, and you took him to the future and showed him this concert, and you were like, check it, everyone's sitting here in separate little stalls, and everyone else around the world is watching on their phones. It's such a confusing future we live in.
It is, man. I mean, it's so funny because I see, we've sort of reactivated some old fans, and so they'll send pictures, and this is us back in, 97. You played Red Rocks in Colorado, and here we are hugging, right? And then there I was stage diving, and covered in sweat and, sort of, probably, sorry to be gross, but singing and sort of spitting little spittles out. And now I'm like, oh, damn, I can't, you got to, back the F up because, you can't be anywhere close. It's so weird. And I know that things will change and get back to normal, but I also think that it's going to be a new normal big time. I just don't know. I mean, a funny thing I said to my bandmates on this call today, because we finalized the deal to do this show, we weren't sure we were going to be able to even pull it off, but Texas has opened restaurants to 20% or 25%. And so there's going to be people there. But it was funny because I said to my guitar player, my bass player, I was like, every time I see you, when we go do a little run, we hug. But I guess we can't do that now? Is that how it works? And I know I sound a little bit, cheesy and redundant because I think everyone's talking about this, but it is just such a weird thing that people keep texting me questions about, wait, what happened about this? Like one question that a friend just texted me, can I buy merch? And the answer is no. We're not going to have a merch booth. We're going to have to just do virtual merch sales for this one show, and but it all is super interesting, and but at the same time, I'm grateful that this venue, Lava Cantina, is pulling this off. It's crazy. I can't believe I'm going to announce. I can't believe that we're going to play a rock show. That's just crazy.
Yeah, no, you're the first person I've done an interview with over the last 2 months that actually has a show on the book. So I think it's amazing. And I think you're right, man. I think this time is really everything like for instance, my thing with my band was we always got in a group huddle and fist bumped each other. And you can't even do that. And it's just all the normal things are just kind of out the window. And I find myself when I watch old movies and TV shows, I think about that stuff now. Like when they're in a busy restaurant, I'm always like, how can they, this is a different time. I think 2020 is the year that we finally are in the future, it feels like. It really does in a lot of ways.
I agree, man. It's super weird. But, again, I'm excited. We have new rock music. We did a couple of those little, Foursquare video things.
Yeah.
And even just releasing that felt good. Our fans were like, oh, my God, thank you. I needed this right now. Just to see my favorite band just rocking out. It's all so weird, and we're all finding ways to do things, and we'll just keep on trucking.
Yeah, man. I feel like music's more important than ever right now. I tell all the bands, local bands will ask me, should we put our records out? I'm like, dude, right now people feel alone. And when you feel alone, you need music more than ever. It's true.
Totally.
Well, Zac, I appreciate you calling in tonight, man. Look out for the Sonic Boom EP coming out the 22nd of this month. And then obviously follow the Nixons on all the socials. You can live stream that show down in Dallas on that same day at 9 p.m. I really appreciate you calling in, man. It means a lot.
Hey, I just want to say thank you to you guys. I moved here, I told you 10 years ago, and my life has sort of been mainly steeped in country music and writing songs and for rock bands. But I love your station. I love, clicking over to 102.9 and just listening to some rock and roll. And when I moved here, I would have never thought I'd be doing an interview about the Nixons in 2020. But it's super cool because, again, I'm a fan of your station, and you guys really do a great job supporting the genre of rock that I come from and that I also still live in. I mean, I'm literally a songwriter on a Shinedown and a Scott Stapp song right now. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to sort of help out the Nixons. We're not a local band, but we kind of are. I live here, dude.
Oh, dude, totally. Yeah, it's the same with Cabo. Like, we're not local, but I'm local, so I would just kind of assume it. But yeah, man, I mean, I've obviously been a fan of yours for a long time, and so whenever I first got wind from Greg that you wanted to come on here, I was like, dude, absolutely, I would love to have him on. It'd be an absolute honor.
Thank you so much for this, dude. I loved it.
I'll talk to you soon.